Our next speaker is Haya from Buffalo, New York, who you just heard from. Today, she'll be talking about her work in writing poems on her opinions on society and climate change. Yak mentor Bella Sullivan will be interviewing her.
Alrighty, so I guess we can get started. I'm Bella. You'll be hearing more from me throughout the day, so I'll save my formal introduction for later. But Haya, are you ready to go ahead and get into it?
Yes, I'm all set.
All right, so I know we got a little bit of a short introduction from you earlier, but tell us a little bit more about yourself, like where you're from, what grade you're going into, your academic interests, what your community is like, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I live in Buffalo, New York, and the grade I'm going into is 11th grade, so I'm 16 years old. Or no, I'm going into 12th grade, and I just finished 11th grade. My community is very diverse. My school in particular is also very diverse. We have people of all colors and all sexual orientations. Of course, there's some people who will be obviously weird about those sort of things, but I think that my community is I'm very fortunate to live in a community where people are very accepting of new ideas and are receptive to them as well.
Nice. So I understand that you were involved with a literary center. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that literary center and like what its purpose is and stuff like that?
Yeah, so my literary center was just a local one, and it was really community based. So it invited people in Buffalo, hybrid, and so in person or over Zoom to just write. And different workshops are being held all the time, and you get introduced to different genres of writing. You get to introduce yourself to different ideas in writing. For example, how you could write poetry a certain way, developing characters, introducing yourself to different genres, and it's really targeted for youth only. I mean, obviously there are adult workshops, but it is has a lot of youth activities. It's really unique because there isn't like such a community or such a center in our area. So that's how it stands out, and actually why I was interested in being involved in it. But yeah, it basically develops literary skills and gets your voice as a writer to be built up.
Nice. So as I understand it, this literary center is like a community thing. It's not based in the schools, right?
No, it's not. Nope.
Okay. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with this literary center and what you did, like what the meat of your project looked like?
Yeah. So, like I said, it's youth-based, and one of the programs that we have is a youth ambassador program, where we basically have submit an application, and we would then represent the literary center on a community on a community level, and I guess on a much other platform since I'm representing them right now. But basically, a youth ambassador hosts some of the workshops that we have for youth. We also perform some of our pieces outside to the community based on what we think, and that's actually where I first started my project. One of the things we had to write was based on an art gallery in these truths, and basically it was just a bunch of art pieces that the writer wanted to use to express her views about society, and we were to write poems based off of them as prompts to kind of accompany the exhibit when we would present it at our local Albright Knox gallery. So another poem that I wrote was a climate change poem, and it was shared with the theater group. So the piece that I wrote for the Indies Truths was a social commentary on the showy nature of people. So I guess what I was trying to emphasize is that we have a lot of performative activism in our society where people post something on Instagram or like Bella mentioned earlier, maybe just a black screen, and they don't really do anything after that to back it up, and they use that as solid evidence for their for them being activists and supporting their societies. And the climate change poem was pushing people to expand upon their actions in climate change. Yeah.
Nice. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the process of how you got these ideas? Like, what is making you so passionate about the social commentary or about this climate change or even just about like writing your own forms of literature? I'm an English major, so I understand. But yeah, what is your inspiration and how are you like forming these opinions and where are you getting like your information from, I guess?
Yeah. So I think paying attention to the world around me was the most important thing in me forming my opinions. I had to first of all see the world to be able to actually form my opinion on it. And I think that as young people often emphasize on, oh, just live in your little bubble and live your childhood to the fullest, and when the adult world comes, then you can experience the hard things. But I think that's a naive outlook, and you can still have fun in your childhood, and you can still have fun in your youth, but still be experienced in the world and first of all, listening to problems that people have that are beyond just, your best friends, listening to the people in your society, in your community, listening to the adults in your community. And as much as a lot of um, people, I think, feel like, oh, I don't want to involve myself in problems of grown-ups. I think it's important to learn about those kinds of problems and to be able to listen to them and not just stay in your own little bubble because you have the excuse of being young. I think being young is actually the best way to involve yourself in these issues because you can use your untarnished view of life to be able to comment on them in a much purer way than any adult can. So I guess you could just pay attention to the news. That's just one step. And listening to people in your school who maybe aren't, you aren't the closest to. And the problems of, like I said, the adults in your life, your parents, your teachers, whatever. And it's just, having an ear tuned out for society. You're not going to get something like right away, but obviously, like it's just a small habit. You listen once, you're going to listen twice, and before you know it, you're suddenly aware of a lot of more things than you thought you would. And then obviously, forming your opinions on these matters is subjective. People form them based on their upbringings and all that. But listening first gets the issues to you, so you can then use your views to be able to support one side or the other, or take a totally different approach to all of the problems.
Nice. I really like um I really like your stance on how kids can still, be interactive in the world around them. Like childhood is more than just growing up. It's like engaging with your surroundings and things like that. So I think that that's a very, very wise point of view that you have. Um, so in service learning and at NYLC, we follow this framework called the IPARD framework. And so this stands for investigation, preparation and planning, action, reflection, and demonstration. So with that framework in mind, how did you start your Youth Voice project? So what was this investigation? What was this preparation and planning? And what was your process? Did you, I know the action happened because we wouldn't be here talking about it if the action didn't happen, right? But how did you reflect on this? How did you like demonstrate this project to your community? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, totally. So first, with writing my piece, I guess investigation step came easy. All I had to do was just think about my opinions, and I think that, and obviously research the art pieces I was going to, base my writing off. But I think that investigation sometimes can sound daunting. Like it doesn't have to be like this whole formal research or something. Investigation, especially with something as subjective as writing, it can just be like gathering your thoughts, investigating and exploring your own opinion on something. And it doesn't have to mean that you have to gather sources and find what everyone thinks about something. It could just be something you're just no part of your brain that you need to explore a lot more deeper than you might think. So a lot of reflection right away, right in the first step. That was investigation. Just have to investigate what I think on a topic. So that was the first part of the IPARD process. And then the planning with writing, and I'm sure you're aware because you're an English major, it's really difficult to plan anything at all. All I could plan is just what day I need to get it in by. I think that the one thing that helped me is like planning my environment. I like to listen to music while I'm working, so that could be one thing. And I think like with writing, it's like so different how you can plan it based on your own needs. And I think that in this process, we have like steps, but it's not like a fixed framework. Like you have to do this and you have to do that. Like it's just taking steps to to just make yourself comfortable as you go into starting the project, and whatever steps those may be. It doesn't have to be like a checklist or a to-do list, especially if it's like writing. And I know that sometimes checklists are daunting for some reason. I don't know. So yeah, the action part is writing. You just have to write, and really nothing more to it than editing and re-editing, which is when I guess the reflection step came in, because I had to read my piece with an eye peeled for errors, and by no means was my first draft a good one. And obviously, I'm sure a lot of people have heard this, that it's very important to get feedback, but like this is really, really is important to get feedback. And I think a lot of people undermine that step. You have your piece written out, now just go ahead and push it out. No, I think that you should, have someone look over it. And even if you're worried about that, I think it's very important to choose the people specifically who you're going to have it review it. For me, I chose my mentor at Youth Ambassador program. She like looked at the details of it, and she was like, "Oh yeah, you could add this, you could add that." And she added little details that flew over my head, and I was like, "This makes it like perfect," especially since I like details and stuff like that. And I also run the idea by my mom, and she was like, "Oh yeah, you could definitely develop it like this or develop it like that." And it's just, you have to be careful about choosing the people, because there's definitely some people who are going to bash you for your idea, and people are going to give you constructive criticism. And I think that it's important that we go in with a mindset that says our ideas aren't going to be perfect right away. So, but you still have to have the right people who will give you support rather than like just hate your idea away. So.
Nice. So whenever you were, writing this piece and kind of like pushing it out into the world, what did you hope would happen after this Youth Voice project? And what did happen? Like, what were the responses that you were getting? Yeah.
So in my piece, I focused on how there's a lot of like, faked activism, or people just pretend to have certain views and care passionately about them. And I really wanted people to be inspired to either change that habit or call it out when they see it, because it can be really harmful for a lot of people to see someone faking activism, especially if it pertains to an issue that it affects them directly. So I just want people to have their eyes opened to whatever happens in society, and to not be blind by what they see on social media, and make that their role model for activism. And what did happen is I surprisingly got a lot of good feedback when I performed the piece, and a lot of people felt that they enjoyed it. I think that the way I delivered it too helped get the idea across, and a lot of people said they liked it, so that was good. Definitely got it out there.
Nice. So in your opinion, what do you think still needs to be done about the issue? So what needs to be done about this fake activism, or about people just watching the news and not like engaging with the news? How, if you were in charge of the world, what would you make, like what change would you make to make things better?
So I just would want more people to realize this, because the more and more people realize it, the less it becomes a trend to make this fake activism thing like okay. I think they can either change the way they respond or react on social media, either by actually backing up what they say with actions and not just putting it out there, or just admitting that they don't feel like they have the ability to make an action. In that case, that could definitely, being honest with the people around you, could definitely lead you to making that action happen. So just being courageous and not worrying about backlash if you feel like you don't fit what activism means, because not everyone's going to be born an activist. Obviously, no one's born an activist. You have to build yourself up to it. And so you just have to be able to be honest with yourself that I don't feel like I'm doing action, and not lie about it and say, oh yeah, I'm still an activist anyways.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes the best and excuse me, sometimes the best and most mature decision is to say, no, sorry, I have to step back. So now that you have kind of gone through this and you've had time to think about it, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you learned during this process and how you grew as a young person who's in this activist space?
I learned that like no matter how small or uncommon you feel the issue you care about is, you should still put it out there. An issue is an issue, and just because you have an eye for detail, it doesn't mean that your topic is always unnecessary. It's just what makes our experiences nuanced and our world better. And I think it's sometimes feeling if you're focusing on too little things, you're like looking at irrelevant things, nobody's gonna care. But no, some people are gonna care. It's out there, so just try it and present your idea.
Nice. And so what advice do you have for young people? So the young people on this call, but also the young people that they're going to be going to school with, or the young people that they're going to be talking about. Wink, wink, everybody, saying, oh my God, guys, I went to this amazing youth summit. This super awesome girl named Haya talked about this poetry thing she did. What do you want them to take with you? What advice do you have for them?
My advice for them is no matter how little they feel the voice is going to be, some people are still going to hear it. And I think this, I guess I could help with like a metaphor that my mom used to tell me all the time, who's like a huge inspiration in my life. She said that once there was a man who was stuck in a hole, and he used to say everything he ever thought of out loud. And, you know, he thought no one was listening because he was in a hole. But everybody in the town found out about everything he ever said. So I think that you need to go in with this mentality, even if you feel like you're talking into a hole, like nobody's listening, like nobody's taking notice of your actions. There are people who are going to listen. And I think when we feel small in this big world, we feel like, oh, talking to one or two people about this random thing that I thought of is not going to make a difference. But, you know, we're a social species. It's going to get out there no matter what you do. So I think that even if you feel like you're talking to a void, your voice is going to be heard, no matter how little you feel.
Nice. Well, thank you, Haya. I enjoyed interviewing you, and I'm going to go ahead and pass over to Henry and I guess everyone else for questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if there are any questions right now, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll see if Haya can answer them.
Okay, so the first one that I saw is what inspired you to start this project? What inspired me, like I said, is just my own opinion on the topic, and also the luck that I happened to find an art piece that fit my idea. The art piece happened to be like different shaped plants, and like how they're all like, you know, trying to be all different and unique, but they're still stuck in their own little pots, not really doing anything. So that inspired me to be like, yeah, people do that when they're pretending always to be activist. So so I think, yeah, art definitely inspired it, and of course my own opinions throughout my growing up. The kind of leadership skills I developed were that I learned to be able to speak up and get out there, because performing the piece was really hard. Like I was really nervous. I remember even accidentally taking my phone up with me, even though I was supposed to leave it on the seat. But I learned that, you know, just have to improvise on the spot, and just which is really important, I think, for a leader, to improvise on the spot and speak louder. You know, you just speak louder, and not like figuratively, but like actually, because you know people are going to be affected more when they hear a powerful voice. How to get the word out for my project. So it was like part of a program hosted by our youth ambassadors. You just have to present the piece, and you had to, you know, just present your idea to the person who was hosting the event, and then, you know, people were going to come to see the event anyways, and they would see your piece as one of the things presented, because it was going to accompany like a gallery. And obviously, as youth ambassadors, we were spreading the word about the event anyways, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. How do you deal with hate and backlash? That's a really good question. I like that one. Hate and backlash is inevitable. I think that you just have to rely on the people that you love in your life, and to also realize that, I mean, you're bound to get hate anyways. You might as well just accept it and not let it get to your head. And while that's easier said than done, I think when you realize that it's just comments on a screen, or someone who probably isn't able to have the bravery that you have, you feel a bit better than them, which is not always good. But I think that that's the best way to deal with hate, because they can often try to bring you down, and the higher you hold your head up, the less you're likely to drown. My biggest inspiration is my mom. She is the most inspiring person in my life, and obviously, like Isabella, that might seem like a cliche answer, but I think that she's the one person who stood by me all my life. So obviously, she's going to be my biggest inspiration. Reactions I've had from adults about your work. Adults were really, you know, they said that they liked the poem, and I was, you know, surprised, because these are adults, and, you know, I'm just a young person. But I think that, again, that's an important part of recognizing that your voice is still important. Anyways, and that you can still make an impact. And the fact that you're young and you're speaking to an audience is probably going to be more attractive to people who are, you know, novel to the idea of, you know, young people speaking up. This might be something different, rather than hearing the same old politician or the same old person talking about the same topic over and over again. Oh, so reading my poem, we had like little magazines printed out in my community. I don't really think that they were out, but I would love for people to read it. Absolutely. Maybe we could get that fixed maybe at the end of this. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, it was just published in my community. It wasn't online, but I think there was maybe digital edition, but I'm not sure if my piece was included in digital edition or just an in-person handout. What were the different types of feedback you had while creating this amazing project? The different feedbacks I had, first of all, I have a lot of constructive criticism, and I was lucky enough to have people push me on my idea and encourage myself, encourage me, I mean. And the different types of feedback also was from my own self. I was like, this is probably horrible. What are you doing? Like, I think feedback, your own feedback to yourself is also something you have to keep in check, to not, criticize yourself to the point where you think what you're doing is stupid. So, that's a different kind of feedback I had to encounter. And thank you for calling it an amazing project. My biggest obstacle was, again, my own mental blocks. I tend to overthink things a lot. I'm very critical of my work, and I just needed to take a deep breath and just write and not worry about what it's going to be like at the end, because then I could quickly fix it and not too worried about what's going to happen at the end of this, and just have to take courage, obviously. And obviously, the biggest obstacle is performing. Like I said, I was very nervous. What made it easier for you to speak in public? I speak in public. I do speech and debate, and I participate in Model UN at my school. So I have like experience speaking in public, but also my mom was in the audience, so I was like, looking over at her to give myself confidence to be able to speak. And it just kind of, it feels better. Like the moment when you say the first word, you're gonna feel like a nervous wreck, but then by the time you get to the end of your piece, you're gonna be like, that wasn't so bad. When did you started to believe that your work would become this big? Never. I don't think I ever believed that it would become this big. And I still don't think it's that big. I'm glad that I get it out to people all over the world here, and in my community. But I think like the biggest thing is that you have to believe that, yeah, your work is getting out there, but also in the same time have the humility to be able to say, but it's still not enough, and push yourself to do better. Oh, and thank you. We'll have to share the piece for you by tomorrow. Okay. Any projects in the works? I'm still just hosting the youth ambassador workshops at my literary center, and we get these new ideas and prompts just as they come at our community center. So nothing currently in the works, but there is this other art gallery thing that we're presenting, and it's another social commentary piece. But yeah, it's through my youth ambassador program, and I'm being prompted by an art gallery piece to discuss how people sometimes it's important to be private in life. So that's a little hint about that. So yeah, I guess I do have other projects. I think that was all the questions. There's no more. I don't know.
All right, it seems like there aren't any other questions in the chat. So let's give Haya a big round of applause and